Mr. Vern Mikkelsen and Mr. John Egan are here. You know, I was of an age to, in fact, I'm a little older than you, a couple of years. I watched the Lakers, and I thought they were wonderful. And I remember Pollard, I remember Mikan, but sadly they're both gone. We're delighted that you're here, alive and well. And you've got this great new book, The Vern Mikkelsen Story. Admittedly, you look a little younger here, but then we all look a little younger when you're in your 20s, right?
That's true.
John, this is a great book and very interesting stories. One of those I wish you'd tell us immediately is how you happened to get to Hamlin. You lived in a small town, northern Minnesota, called Ascoff. You were already a basketball star in high school, but how did you happen to go to Hamlin?
Well, this is, I think it's an interesting story, and unfortunately a lot of the people who are watching your show, Roland, are of the age where some of them can remember the Minneapolis Lakers.
Oh, yes.
And, excuse me, and I was in the junior in high school when a guy that was the guy that got the players for Joe Hutton, the coach at Hamlin.
Sort of a scout.
He was a scout, and he was a professor there, but he was a single guy, and all summer long he'd drive all over the world, or the Minnesota really. And he was on his way from Hamlin to the iron range, because that's where all the jocks were at the time. And he got a flat tire in my little town of Ascol. Mm-hmm. It was about 350 people.
It's about that today, isn't it?
And it hasn't changed a bit, which may be good or may be bad. But anyway, he got a flat tire there, and he had to get the tire fixed, and he stopped in the one gas station that's there. And there's only one guy that could fix the tire, and he was fixing it, and they got to visiting. And this guy, he asked Al Holst, who turned out to be my guy, what are you doing here? And he says, I'm looking for athletes. I'm looking for basketball players. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, we've got one here that's pretty good. Uh-huh. And Al never heard by name. Uh-huh. However, he was soon brought up to date. And I had a chance to visit with Al Holst while I was pulling rutabagas, as we used to call them back then, because on Saturdays I was a town kid, I wasn't a farm boy, and it gave us a chance to make a buck or two, and I'm out there pulling roots, and here comes this 1936 Buick down the road and coming across the line. And I could tell that he was looking for someone, and he had no idea who he was looking for. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being the tallest guy sitting there pulling roots. And he stopped me, and the rest is history. I ended up going to Hamlin.
A marvelous story. I'm going to ask you a question, because I've always been curious about this. In the book, you finally explain this to me. Power forward. I keep hearing about power forward nowadays, but I understand that the first power forward was Vern Mikkelsen, and it was arranged by that great coach who's still alive, Johnny Kundla. John, what's a power forward?
Well, there was not even a term at the time for what Vern was going to be. Mm-hmm. It came about, Roland, because John Kundla was experimenting with what now is a common term, the double pivot, mm-hmm. double post, putting both Vern and George underneath the basket. It was obvious early on that with George and Vern and a narrow lane and two defenders, it was too crowded. And Mikkelson made that observation one day, and Coach Johnny Kundla took Vern and pulled Vern, who had never played anything but center, out a ways to a forward position that had been occupied by a wonderful athlete named Swede Carlson, another Minneapolis and University of Minnesota name,
sure.
And a great Laker, but he was 6 foot tall, maybe a bit over. And
a midget.
Compared to Vern. And when Vern went out there and started to play the position the way we know it now, other teams adapted. Pretty soon Bob Pettit came along, and at 6'9", even taller than Vern, He played his whole career out at what by then was called power forward. And it was to crash the boards, it was to set picks, play defense, and in Vern's case, foul out of games.
Well, now that we've established all these arcane,
Thanks, John.
now that we've established all these arcane terms, let's take. We've got some footage, and this is thanks to Almanac on TPT2, and we're going to take a look at Vern Mikkelsen and Jim Pollard and Mikkelson playing. Okay, and you'll give some color commentary.
Thank you, Roland. I'll be happy to. And besides, Vern and I want to thank Eric and Kathy for what we had the opportunity to do there one day.
Yeah.
Vern is number 19 in this footage. Big George Mikan is the center. Jim Pollard, a marvelous player at 6'5", is a forward. And you can see in this film why, I hope, they became the most effective front line in perhaps in basketball history. But compared to the next time there was a front line compared to them, it was Wilt Chamberlain, Chet Walker, and Lucius Jackson.
A dozen years later.
Many years later.
Yeah.
But as far as Vern was concerned, you can see in this footage, you can see him rebounding. You can see him actually make a shot, which he had to learn to do. He had to learn to shoot from away from the basket. So it's a very informative footage.
And then there was something about the 24-second rule. It was because of the Lakers, who were so powerful that the Fort Wayne team one time stalled and wound up winning a 19-18 game, holding the ball for minutes at a time, and that could have destroyed the game because of that ridiculous performance. And so that's how you got, what, to a 24-second rule?
It actually took some legislative maneuvering, so it was a year or two later before it went in. But it brought about the shot clock. They'd already widened the lane, and that was because of George and Vern and Jim as well. But the shot clock came about because Fort Wayne, like other teams, knew that there wasn't much point in running or trying to play even with the Lakers for a whole game, so they held it.
But the interesting thing that goes along with that, this was back in 1952 and 53 that the shot clock was improvised, 24 seconds. And today, 50 years later, it's still 24 seconds.
You guys pioneered that.
That's amazing, I think.
Final question. Am I correct that in 1995, when you were given the honor of Hall of Fame, National Basketball Association, that player that you played against, Bob Pettit, gave the introduction to your honor, and I think in the book it mentions that was possibly your greatest thrill.
Well, it had to be right up there, and part of the reason was that a few years had gone by. Johnny Quinlan and I were both put into the Hall of Fame in 1995, excuse me, in 1995, and we were real pleased that so much time had taken, because our kids now were old enough they could come to the event, and they thoroughly enjoyed it, and so did we.
Oh, that's marvelous. Well, I want to congratulate you guys for the book, and Vern, 50 years later, congratulations on that remarkable performance. John, that was a great book. I'm very appreciative, and I'm hoping that, I'm sure that a lot of people who are basketball fans and who loved a little bit of history would like the Vern Mikkelsen story. It's a very engaging story. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Roland. Appreciate it.